very briefly introducing the Global Anti-Scam Alliance. I'm the managing director. Sam Rogers is my colleague, our marketing manager. Our mission is very simple and I have to say a little bit ambitious, but we want to protect consumers worldwide from online scams. And we do that in several ways. We organize meetups like these about one or twice a month to share intelligence on the latest scams or developments or trends, to help each other recognize scams better, but also act on them and better give support to victims. We also do a lot of research. In the next few months, we're going to publish 30 different reports on how many people are being scammed in Germany, in the USA, in China, in Singapore, to help raise awareness on scams, but also share best practices and solutions from what we can learn from the different countries on protecting consumers better. And finally, last but not least, once per year, we organize our Global Anti-Scam Summit, where we also meet physically. And it looks like our next summit on the 17th or the 18th and 19th of October is going to be a big success. We expect about 250 people to join physically and about 1,000 virtually. So if you haven't registered yet, either to attend virtually or physically, please feel free to do so. It would be great to see you and work together with you on identifying and building better solutions to protect consumers. Before we start, the Chatham House rules apply, meaning that you can use the information presented to you, of course, but if you do, please ask permission, or if you make screenshots, please ask permission from Anna or Cecile before you publish it on the internet or use it in any other way. With that, I would like to give the floor to our two presenters, Anna and Cecilie. Anna and Cecilie, would you mind starting with introducing yourself and take the floor?
Yes, thank you so much for that good introduction, and thank you so much for having us. I've been very excited about this webinar, and yeah, my name is Cecilie Fjellhøy. You might recognize me as one of the victims of the Tinder Swindler, but so after it came out, I have become an advocate, call myself an activist, and are traveling around the world, spreading the message about the human side of fraud. So right now I'm in Malaysia, and I just held a presentation today. So yeah, fraud is global, and that is the message here.
Hi, my name is Anna Rowe, and I was a victim of catfishing back in 2015. So my experience happened just before Cecilia's. It was for 14 months. And after my experience, when there was nowhere to go, I set up my website with everything I'd learned to catch the catfish. And from that day onwards, I've been helping victims of catfishing, which was similar to my own experience. But then I also started getting messages from what was clearly a financial motivation behind the catfishing. And I've been helping victims for the last 6 years. So I help about 75 to 100 victims a week now. And that's globally, not just in the UK.
Amazing. Sam, were you going to share the presentation?
I can do, yeah, if you just give me one moment.
Yeah.
And while Sam is loading the presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to use the chat, and also feel free to use the chat to introduce yourself and interact.
While we're just loading that up, Cecilia and I actually met through a different webinar, didn't we? Oh, goodness me, it was well over a year ago now, actually. So we've been working together for the last year, haven't we?
Yeah, it's been amazing to go on this journey with Anna, and because I had my own little organization in Norway, but we decided that we wanted to combine forces. So Anna has Catch the Catfish, but LoveSaid is kind of the baby for the both of us. And so that is where that came out. And we're hoping to create a real change with it. And we've been getting tons of amazing feedback from people, but we are still looking for the funding for it as well. So we're going to go through a bit of that with you as well today about the plans. Will we be able to share it or?
Can you see the screen? Sorry, I am
Yes.
sharing. Yeah, you can see
Okay.
the presentation.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
We can only see us, Sam. This presentation's at the bottom.
Oh, right. Okay.
I can see it.
I can see it.
So feel free to
Sam?
start. I will solve the technical issues.
Yeah, I can see the presentation.
Oh, it's only at the bottom of my screen, tiny.
I think it's something you need to do anyways. So we need to tell you to go to the next slide, Sam. Sorry about this, people.
Yeah, please
Okay,
do.
next slide then.
These quotes that are showing now are just really, I think they're really relevant to romance fraud, and it's something that people actually forget, that what happens is actually a fraud. I know a lot of the victim blaming goes on around thinking that because victims have handed money over that it's actually not fraud and it's their fault, but those quotes are really quite relevant.
Next slide.
Little bit of information there just about what's coming up in the presentation.
It's a bit of the agenda that we're going to talk a bit about our story, the types of catfishes, what we have done, romance fraud in general. Anna's going to go a bit of a deep dive into the scammer dictionary about the different types of scammers. So it's going to be an interesting session. Next slide.
So shall I start with mine, Cecilia? And then you can do the victim blaming bit afterwards. Okay, so I've already explained I was a victim of catfishing back in 2015, and that's what led me to do what I do now. Mine's a little bit different to our normal romance fraud victims because mine was actually a lawyer here in the UK who was leading a double life with a fake identity online. He came pretty much like Cecilia's, he came offline to meet his victims. So there are 17 of us that I know of, and the motivation for him wasn't financial. It was very much a sexual motivation, but not just that. He got a real kick out of having power and control over his victims through the deception and the life that he'd created and made us think that we were part of as well. So I know he'd been doing that for a very, very long time. Over 12 years actually. So there is a case with him at the moment that's still going through our diabolically slow system.
Yeah, next slide.
So victims, myself, Cecilia, and romance fraud victims, this was what made me initially be really empathetic and have immediate understanding towards romance fraud victims as we normally know them, because when they were sending me their messages from their scammers, I recognised immediately the type of script that was being used. So with Cecilia and I's abusers, what came very naturally to them, being narcissists and psychopaths, is what is actually borrowed. It's that very, very well documented script that is borrowed by these scammers and used in romance fraud scams. We know from personal experience just how powerful that is. And it all starts with a grooming process. So here you can see these are actual text messages from mine. I've highlighted some bits there where we were grooming. So you can see on the first bit there, he's clarifying that he's been single for ages. It's important to be responsible. I asked him what made him angry. He said poor communication and mind games. So it's almost that reverse psychology of how they're actually behaving. We know in hindsight. I told him before we actually met that I felt ridiculously close to him. Here he was throwing back at me that if he was only after sex, he'd have been there in a shot. We actually talked for 3 months online before we met in person. Down the side here in the white is actually after I'd caught him out, but I was trying to when it dawned on me that he wasn't who he said he was, I was trying to find out who he really was and track him down. And this was one of the matches that I made with him. It became apparent, his behaviour, because he was incredibly easy to match with. He was constantly online targeting women. And there you can see his wording. If you got horribly burned, I'm not the sort of man that would walk away. So this is the kind of thing that scammers say when they're grooming, setting the scene. And have the next slide, Sam. When they've got you with the grooming, the love bombing begins. So they feel that they've got that connection and they will start love bombing. And that literally means that you are not left alone. These kinds of messages were absolutely constant. The first one that's highlighted on that text there, Cecilia's got one, you'll see on her slides from hers, was almost identical. And I know one of the women that tagged on after mine, because there were 5 overlapped with me over that 14 months, that these kind of phrases and words are used all the time. Just like with normal romance scammers, he used to call me his wife. He'd ask me to marry him several times, telling me that I belonged to him. He wanted me to be very possessive with him. Surprise visits, he would come, you know, I wouldn't know that he was coming. He'd turn up really, really late at night or ask me to put a key under the mat. So this is love bombing, when you're literally just not left alone and you are made to feel so important. And for people that lack self-esteem or self-worth, having somebody give you this much attention really works. Next slide, please. So when you're going through that process, they will start testing you. So you get onto this roller coaster, and as much as he would love bomb, he would then suddenly disappear. And this is what romance fraud scammers generally do. If someone hasn't perhaps done what they've been asked or they've challenged, the scammer will disappear and the victim starts to fear the loss. So when the scammer comes back, victims are then more compliant to what's being asked of them. I would be terrified after all the love bombing and that connection that he'd built with me, that you know, he would vanish and I would really panic.
Plastic, just like this. This is going to keep you from having to poke holes in the top to get a bottle out. Now, just
There's somebody who has forgotten to turn off his mic. Would you mind turning off your mic?
Thank you. I just wondered what that was, and I thought something was playing then that I didn't know what it was.
Go ahead.
So yeah, this is the kind of testing, and scammers do this as well. They will gradually test the victim to see what they think that they can get from them. Can I have the next slide, please? And finally, we've got trauma bonding. So we've all heard that romance fraud scammers will tell victims that something terrible has happened. With Cecilia's, he was in danger, as we know. And it can be a variety of things with romance fraud scammers. This lawyer stood in front of me with tears in his eyes, telling me that his mum had been diagnosed with cancer. And I was devastated for him. It was his way of keeping me close. And then whenever there was, you know, any issues in the coming months, it would always be that he was really stressed and it was because of this. So it's not just romance fraud scammers that do that. This is something that comes very naturally in abusive relationships. We can move to the next slide, please. So on the back of what happened to me, this is pretty much like Cecilia. There had been nowhere to go, and I decided that I really needed to turn what had happened to me into something positive. So for the past 6 years, I gradually built pages across social media, and I started doing interviews, podcasts, and I've been working with some people over in America, Rowe down here we can see. is, or was, he's just retired actually, a news anchor from Louisiana. His pictures have been used for about a decade. And so we've done quite a few interviews together. Up here's Rebecca Mason. She's a romance fraud detective here in the UK. We do lives together. And it's just really important that the braver we are and the more we share our stories and the more we raise awareness is the best way to educate people about this. Next slide, please. That's yours, Cecilia.
Oh, it's more that I can't see it. What is it? Sorry, I just can't. I don't even see the presentation anymore. I'm so sorry. This is embarrassing for me. Yeah.
What is visible now is the slide with grooming, love bombing, with the screenshot of the flowers.
It takes a minute before I get it, so this is going to be fun. No, I wanted to tell a bit more, just very quickly. Most people know about the Tinder Swindler, but I wanted to go a bit about the social engineering, about actually what happened. Not everyone has seen the Tinder Swindler, but I got conned out of £200,000, took up 9 high consumer debt loans to try to save my boyfriend, who was in danger for his enemies. So it's a very typical romance scam, the same as Anna was showing, proper love bombing. He came to visit me single-handedly in Oslo, but as well with me, he was instilling direct fear, inciting kind of the fear and violence that he was being attacked by his enemies. He had to leave me by myself when I was in Amsterdam visiting him. And I was visibly very fearful for his life and mine as well. It made me change my Instagram account. So these are people that would go to really long lengths to get what they want. And next slide, please. Let's see how long it takes now. Yes, so this is one of the quotes that he sent me a voice note, which is quite powerful, you know, where he says, "I told you we're in a war. They're very good at making you against the rest of the world, and no one else understands this," you know. So after this attack in Copenhagen that he had, he says that, why would I ever thought that he was fooling me around, you know, that Peter is half dead and that he will probably be dead. And you can then imagine the kind of, you will do whatever you want for the people that you love. Next slide, please, Sam. So for me, as I said, in just 54 days this happened, you know, and I'm been constantly talking about this kind of wheel we're in that is spinning and spinning, and we get questions all the time on what does it take, you know, because we feel that we can't even jump out. It takes so much time before you actually admit to yourself that this has happened to you. And this is the consequence, you know, you're left with a totally destroyed life. My life was destroyed, and I had to file for bankruptcy to be able to go back to a normal life after this, because this was an unimaginable high number to have lost. Next slide, please. God.
It's your warrants.
Yeah, so what happened here with my case, after I'd gone to the press, I was being a suspect with the UK police, unfortunately. By us being the voice and the hands of the fraudsters, I had sent in fake documents. I didn't know they were fake at the time, but unfortunately for myself, I had done that. So the UK police created a case that I had brought it American Express with Simon, and they came for a warrant, and I had to go into questioning as a suspect, which was a really, really difficult thing. I think we have to be mindful of, when we put the focus so much on what the victim are doing instead of what the criminal are doing, we're going at it the wrong way. Next slide, please. I'm so sorry about that. I can't. Okay, yes. And especially when Simon was caught in Greece, he was jailed there for some time for a fake passport. This is the message I got from the UK police, that I was treated as a suspect and I could not get any information about what they were going to do or the whereabouts, and I would have to read it in the media. And this is a guy who had made death threats against me. So you can imagine the kind of extra trauma we as victims many times are feeling, because we're not even being viewed as victims of this crime. Next slide, please. Can you see it?
Yeah, it's where he told you about the company fraud.
Yeah, I have it. So what happened in the end, luckily the charges against me were dropped here, but then I got the phone call where they were explaining and that they had looked at is whether it was worth prosecuting me in order to get to him. And they upheld a company fraud, because as we know, when it comes to fraud, the bigger the amount, the more serious of a fraud it is, based on the law. And he says that's why they were going forward with that, and he would get more jail time. And that is one of the main and key issues why me and Anna is talking so much about the human side of fraud, because the emotional and mental abuse that he conducted against me was not part of that at all, which is such a sadness to see. Next slide.
This is showing what Cecilie has done similar to me since this happened.
Yeah, so after everything, I just felt compelled to continue and do the talking and be an activist, as I said, because I see a clear need to put more victims up on stages. We are powerful and we're stronger together. So in the last years, this has been my main focus. And now with Anna, we're even better. Next slide.
This is showing just a couple of the messages that I've got from victims, and I know Kev's already seen one of these because it's probably the one of the ones that nearly broke my heart, and I was just so grateful I could be there. So if you read any of them, read the one on the right hand side or the top right, because this was a young girl from Australia, a Filipino girl actually, that was over there working away from home. And she'd not been with her family for a couple of years. 5 of her family members had died since she'd been in Australia, and she couldn't afford to go back to see them. And she'd been trying to save and save and save. And this scammer came and got hold of her, and she lent him her savings. And then she realised, obviously, that he wasn't real and she wasn't getting her money back. And she'd actually, overnight, because of the time difference, she'd actually written her sister a letter and taken some tablets. But thank God I answered the message in time and spent a couple of hours with her. And I'm just so pleased that I was there. And she's not the only one. She was just one of the most recent that was in that much of a state, that she was willing to take her own life over it. And this, unfortunately, it's not unusual. There's also a lot of scammer groups out there who really don't treat victims the way they should be. And the bottom right one there, because Cecilia and I have both been victims, we understand what these victims have been through. And that's the kind of response that I get all the time from victims. And I'm just so privileged that people are happy to come and share their stories. I know Cecilia feels the same. And that we know we're offering the right kind of support. And when the right kind of support is offered, victims come out of this the other side in a good way, and they feel empowered to start fighting back.
Yeah.
Next page, please. I'll quickly run through this. You can see the ticked ones there is what we're talking about today. There's lots of different types of catfish. MTV Catfish highlights mainly personal catfish, which is all of those issues there. Mine came offline. He's very unusual. And then of the financial catfish, we've got Cecilia's type, obviously, our Tinder swindlers. We've got them, our own ones here too. Mainly today, we're talking about the African romance fraud victims, or the scammers, I should say. They're the ones who, unfortunately, are in the majority. Next slide, please. A lot of people still don't know what romance fraud is. So hopefully you're going to have an insight today with our deep dive. But most important is what's on the next slide, I think.
Yes, as we've been saying kind of about the victims and how it's been so important for us to show that we are all on the spectrum. And when it comes to how to talk to victims and how to get us out of, as we call it, the spell, we're so unique individuals that have all our past experiences, you know. So how we are acting towards it, it's not a typical way that you can deal with it. That is how we have come to work with victims and how to actually care for them. Do you want to add to that, Anna?
Yeah, it's on every scale. The way that they act in the fraud and the way that we react afterwards is absolutely dependent on all of those different factors there. And it's something that really feeds into victim blaming, because people think that if it wouldn't happen to them, then everyone else must be stupid and it's their own fault. And it's really not. We just need to take into account that every human is completely unique, and all of those different circumstances there, genetics, past experiences, culture, upbringing, education, all of those in different amounts make up a different individual for every single person on this earth. And if we can remember that and hold on to that, it should go some way to understanding why some people are more vulnerable than others, or why, you know, some people are exploited or targeted better than other people. Next slide, please. Do you want to go for this, Cecilia?
What is it?
It's the qualities.
Yes. Yeah, like I always say when this happened to me, and kind of when we are talking to other victims as well, is that I trusted, you know, or I felt so much, or I was giving. All of these are qualities that we are really appreciative in other people. If you think about it, these type of people that you meet in your life, you want to have an empathetic person around you, or a generous, or that have respect, or just loving. But it's kind of when you become a victim of this type of crime, suddenly it gets twisted, it gets turned upside down, and you are being called stupid and naive for having these good-hearted qualities. But I always start saying that it doesn't matter if you think I was kind of stupid or naive for being all these wonderful qualities, because it's still a crime. So they're taking very good-hearted human beings and are then using that against us. So yeah,
It's
this is something that I'm very passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a real good lesson to learn there. Who do you want in your life around you? I certainly don't want someone that's not trustworthy, that's always challenging me, questioning me, that isn't respectful. I want people like that around me in my life. Next slide, please. So now we're going to get to the bad people. We've looked at the victims and how brilliant they are. So now we're going to look at the bad people. And unfortunately, victims are always classed as naive and gullible, but we're going to show you why they're not. Next slide, please. So many campaigns out there say if they won't make a video call, they're a scammer. And what that is telling people is that if they do make video calls, then they're not scammers. More scammers than not make video calls. They started out like this, and you can see on the left how they do it. These, the message in the middle there is from one of the groups, where they're asking in the training groups if anyone can show them how to do it. These are normally very quick. The one on the right, there's the longest I've ever seen of this style. It was about 2 minutes, 30 seconds. He'd slowed the video down and was actually doing a voiceover. That lady knew it was a scammer and she was recording it on purpose, which was fantastic for us to be able to show. Of course, with technology, these things have evolved. And if we have a look at the next slide, deep fakes have arrived. I don't know if we've got any volume on that one.
I think that will, it's a setting and it doesn't work at the moment. I'm sorry.
Okay, so this is basically showing how deep fakes are going to work and how they're going to cause so many problems with lots of frauds. We've already seen it on fake adverts with the likes of Martin Lewis being used in deep fakes for the investment scams. This is showing how the guy at the bottom obviously has Morgan Freeman's voice and face superimposed over the top. And if we move to the next slide, we can see how the scammers are now utilising that as well. So the next slide you're going to see is actually videos from their training groups that I hide in, because when I do something, I have to get in there as deep as I can. So I'm hiding out with these guys in their groups, and these are the demonstration videos to show the other scammers how they can now use deepfake videos. If the sound was on, you'd be able to hear them saying, I can move my head from left to right, up and down, I can show my teeth. So they feed that software with the person's pictures that they've chosen to scam with and any videos to get their voices. And then the scammer can literally sit there and do what he wants in front of the camera. So warnings that we would have given victims before to say, ask them to do something because a saved video can't be manipulated, ask them to put their finger on their nose, to stand up and turn around, anything like that. Even if they were doing a voiceover so they could respond to questions, they couldn't change the action on a saved video. Now they've got this and they can do anything. Next slide, please. And the next slide will show you where they're actually using them with victims. So again, this is where they're showing how successful they're being using the deep fakes with victims. And you can see 3 images there. You've got the scammer, the superimposed image, and the victim. Next slide, please. So scammers are also incredibly good at making fake websites. The one on the left there is a military website, which has got phishing opportunities built into it for information for identity theft. It's got all of the different billing opportunities, as the scammers call them, where they will ask for gift cards for Wi-Fi packages, or there are billing opportunities you can see there for leave, honeymoon leave, all costing different amounts. They also do the same thing. We can see on the right here, they clone bank accounts. That's where it's been sent to a victim in their messages there. So they're ripping off HSBC there. These are actually, they look like working bank accounts. The victim will be given the details to log into. They will see the amount of money that's in that account, and that's how they're often convinced that the money is there to be paid back as soon as the scammer can get the account unblocked. Next page, please. They also, victims do their due diligence, and scammers with their fake websites, setting up companies, will be on LinkedIn and also Companies House. So here we've got a fake website, and the directors there are on Companies House with that company. The guy there, Paul Gerard Hicks, is actually an Azerbaijani lawyer called Taghi Husinov. That's him below, and he's been used for decades in scams. So it's his face that's been used there. I often say to people to go and look at the About section when they say meet the team, and run those pictures through a reverse search, because often the meet the team is stock images. So it's a good place to go and check if you're not sure. Next slide, please. One of the most asked question is, but they had a phone number that's registered to a certain country. And here it shows from the scammers groups how they get numbers for anywhere in the world. And in those groups, scammers will show you how to get them, or they will trade with each other. Google Voice and Text Me are really popular with scammers, Google Voice particularly, because it can act like a landline of what I've been made aware. There's also temporary number websites that they use where they're out of service numbers that are waiting to be recycled. And so those numbers, they can receive just the verification code for dating apps, WhatsApp, all of the other chat apps that they use. And that's why sometimes victims find that scammers are changing numbers quite frequently throughout their fraud. And it's because as soon as that number goes back into service, they then have to re-verify with another number. Next page, please. Some of the scammers are called editors, and they will create things like fake IDs, fake notifications. They will send fake text messages to say that payments have been sent or received. The medical bills that they send, all of these obviously from the editors. Some of them aren't great, but some of them are really convincing. And if you think you know what every country's passport looks like, take a, check of yourself, because I certainly don't know what every country's passports are meant to look like. So some of them are really quite convincing. Next page, please. These are some of the photoshopped things that the editors do. Here on the left is, you can see the real one there is Captain Thomas. He is used all the time by scammers, and a lot of the time where you'll see down here on the oil rig ones, I've had all of these sent to me. So it's the same picture with different heads on when they've decided to use in the scams. But here, the blended one is actually the first time I've started to see the blended faces. So we've got the two real people here, and they've blended together onto Captain Thomas here, and they've also done that on a deep fake little video there as well. Sometimes it's really subtle things. On the army one there, they've literally just changed the name on the uniform. Next page. Scammers will go to great lengths, and this was just from one victim that this came. They wanted to convince the victim so much that what they were saying about a particular soldier was real, and they created what was supposed to be a post from an anti-scam site, not mine, with the information in it that they wanted the victim to know. And then here, they actually created fake text messages. So they went to a fake text message app and they created a conversation that was supposed to be with me to send the victim. And I woke up with that in my DMs saying, did you have this conversation with this person? And I actually got in a real panic to start with, because well, it looks like my direct messages, but it's not my direct messages. I didn't have that conversation. And then I started looking more closely, and you can see at the top that when they've set up the fake text app, they got the names the wrong way around, how it appears in Instagram. I don't have my active on. That was my first thing that made me double check. And the logo obviously is a little bit too big, but they will go to any lengths to back up what they're saying and convince the victim. Next page, please. Scammers will also send gifts. They will spend other people's money on convincing the victim that they're real. So this brave victim was really lovely and let me share her pictures of the flowers that were sent to her. They will also send pizzas, breakfast. I've had scammers pay for victims' phone bills. They will also attempt to download spyware onto victims' phones so that they can obviously preempt everything that's going on. They're nice flowers too, right? I like them.
Yes, they are.
Next page, please.
I did receive 2 flowers from Simon. One's the 100 red roses, and then he sent me flowers with a card where it says, "Thank you for being with me through the darkest period of my life." So,
oh,
yes.
They
with
do,
a teddy bear as well. Yeah.
I got chocolate.
Anna and Cecile, we have 15 minutes left. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of questions. So maybe how much time do you need?
I think you need to hurry up through those slides.
If
My
we
apologies.
just flick through, that's okay, and I'll show you the rest. We'll talk through. There's obviously lots and lots of different types of scams that are going on. Pig bitchering is the last one. Lots of you will probably have heard of that. It's romance fraud combined with investment fraud. That's one of the fake websites. Next page, please. Sextortion can also be standalone, but also part of romance fraud. We've got one of the messages there. They're vile and they blackmail. We've got things in place. I've not yet had one victim that's fallen having to give them money. We've got them out of it. Next page, please. That little video just shows all of the different professions that are used. Military and oil rig workers remain the top of it, closely followed by contractors and architects, engineers. Next page, please. These are some of the ways that they extort money, and the most common still remains what's called the package scam or the consignment scam across all of the different formats that they use. That's a really popular video that's playing there. I've been sent it probably about 100 times. Next page, please. Some of the other ways they extort money, depending on the format, can be the military leave forms. Gift cards are obviously quite common across most of them. Medical bills, boarding school fees, helping to fulfill a contract, money to get flights to see them. They all remain quite common. Most recently, I've seen immigration payments and asking for things for rent and food where businesses have collapsed over COVID. Next page, please. There's a little dictionary of the words that we've seen used. Clients are what obviously they call victims. Formats are the skeleton stories. Billing is how they get the money. Rippers are my favourite. They're the ones that scam the scammers. Next page, please. There's some of the bits in use there, those words. Next page, please. That's all from the scammer training groups. There's also a lot of recruiting goes on. Not all scammers work for huge organised crime groups yet. They start out as newbies and they get recruited into smaller groups, bigger groups, and then obviously some of them will be recruited into the huge organised crime. Next page, please. These are some of the other scams. They're not one-trick ponies. Yahoo is huge. I think the Sakaba boys do exactly the same from Ghana. So there's lots and lots of different scams. They love running their ads. They're really, really popular. Next page, please. They're also heavily into their rituals. So this is something you might hear about. The Sakaba boys particularly like doing this. So they're blessing their hustle with their bubbers. Next page, please. So that we can get to tell you about LoveSaid. And this, just you can see the orange one there, shows you just how disgusting they get. This is in their groups. Can you help a brother? What can I collect from disabled clients? And I get this, unfortunately, a lot with friends and family coming to me with victims like this. Next page, please.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, I can take this.
Yep.
Just bring up Google. I figured out how I can speak, because I think it's important to say that when it comes to the victim blaming here, like we're talking about a lot of these online romance frauds, you know, and you get blamed because how dare you never even met this person, how can you be in love? But I got blamed as well, even though I met my fraudster several times, you know, and shared the same bed and all of that. And even Anna, as you were saying, even you were told that you're just a scorned woman, you know, even though no money was involved. No matter what, you get blamed. And I think that is our saying here, is that there's just something about this type of crime that makes it no matter what you do, you will get blamed. So next slide, please. So what we really want to do is LoveSaid. It's a fraud center, it's a think tank. We want to create proper change here. Next slide. And we have already started. We've done several webinars and we've done this as well. And we're very grateful for that. And we are doing Instagram lives and we are going out to police and we are really out and about and are spreading the word. Next slide, please. We have tons of stuff that we want to do, but it's two projects that are on the top of our list is to create a peer support community. We see what that is, how important it is to connect with others who have gone through the same stuff as we have. And then we want to create a digital step-by-step guide to actually show people what they need to do when and be there for them so they are not, because everyone, we are traumatized. We don't know what to do and we don't know where to go. Next slide, please. So as we saw, we call it like or this was a term coined by Anna, really a one-stop shop organization. So people don't know where to go. This is for romance fraud in particular. We think is super important. Is one of the worst frauds there is, or maybe the most difficult fraud. Next slide. So this is just, we have just started making a bit of a prototype where we are now wanting to get some feedback from people as well. But this is like the stepping stones. And next slide, please. And will be the community platform where we're going to have meetups both in person and online. We will be able to put people into groups dependent on where they are in their journey and can get proper support. And of course, we will have volunteers and we will safeguard this as well. Next slide, please. And we are been so lucky that we have so many organizations that we are already and businesses that we already are collaborating with, because we are all about collaboration. We need more academic research, and yeah, we can't do it alone. Next slide, please. So kind of the next steps and why we really believe that romance fraud is just going to be even huger, because there are lack of regulation. We are sometimes calling out some of, Meta and the dating apps. We need more regulations. We need stricter punishments. We need people to actually prioritize it. So I said the lack of consequence, like with my fraudster, Simon Levi, and most of the most known, he's still out there. There are no consequences for these fraudsters. And of course, as Anna has been going on about, the developing technology here is scary, but we can as well use that tech for good. And we, on the good side, I feel that in the end, we will win here. Next slide. Yeah, so this is kind of, if there's anyone that wants to contact us or would want to help us out with this mission, we're here to stay as well. So these are the different social media and the emails. And then I was quick. So then we have, next slide, please. Then we have some time for Q&A.
That was a Formula One spin through the
Thank you very much, Cecilie and Anna. If you have any questions, feel free to use the chat. Sam, if you wouldn't mind, could you go back to the slide where Cecilie and Anna are showing everything they want to build? Because I think we have a lot of people in the call, and maybe we can take one more minute to Anna and Cecilie to show you what you have in mind. I think one more slide back.
one more.
Yeah, it was this with all the arrows.
This one. Yeah. I mean, this went very fast, but I think this is interesting because here people might be able to chip in or help you with building different blocks. Would you mind briefly going through this slide again?
So we've got, it's a long-term goal, and we've actually, with the education and training, we've already started little bits. It's really lovely. We've been invited to a couple of police conferences. Kev, that's on here today, I've sat with his team for a couple of afternoons going through things, which is really incredible. We also, Dr. Elizabeth Carter is an amazing academic, Martina Dove. They've created some amazing research, and we want to build that into our communities as well. I think long term, we'd love for there to be a proper database of the images used and the phone numbers and emails, because the ones that are out there at the moment, they just don't work. What else is there? And
kind of my dream here as well is to go internally to different financial institutions maybe and see how they can improve their process. The one dream that we have is that we can have a big group of ex-victims to help people kind of break the spell, because a lot of the times banks and police are being made the enemy of us, and we're scared of them. But we really truly believe that the power of ex-victims can really help humanize these type of things for the people who are already being brainwashed by this. So yeah, these are the type of things we really just want to create a digital space for people to go to. I think that's the first step that we're going to do, that they can actually go and feel supported. It's going to be a very welcoming tone. There's no victim blaming here, where we are, what we are going to do. And of course, campaigning and advocating. I have a really huge belief that we can have, we need a totally different message when it comes to fraud. A lot of this time, or maybe we, Anna, don't really agree with the stop and think about fraud, or that it's almost like we're taking a risk when we're being defrauded. You don't think about fraud when you're being defrauded. You will never do that. Then you would have stopped it. So I think we need to think very differently about how we are speaking of
and
victims
changing
and
the stigma in general. Yeah.
So
people aren't scared to talk about it.
Yeah. So this is just a start.
I see a few questions in the chat. Aaron Dixon, would you mind raising your question?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm just wondering about your investigative process, as I am daily involved with looking into scams and these types of things. Do you have a particular, a framework for how you go about investigations, and do you utilize commercial off-the-shelf tools or softwares, or how do you kind of leverage technology to support your investigations?
My investigation comes from experience of working with victims for 6 years, really. So once you've started to understand these scams, they obviously become very easy to recognise. But scammers are always utilising new photos, particularly, although the stories tend to stay the same. Face check ID is absolutely incredible. It's for me, it's better than any of the other ones: Google Image, TinEye, Bing, Yandex. Yandex is probably better than all of those others. But yeah, face check ID is incredible. I also use Grabify with some victims. I will write a little paragraph and set a link up. If they're still not quite sure or they don't want to believe, you can send a Grabify link to grab the locations. I'm really lucky with the huge bank of resources I've collected, like I've just shown some of them, a little handful on those slides there. When victims don't understand, but I've seen them on a video call, I can go and use those resources to help say, look, this is how that was done. Or I show them the posts from the editors when they've created those fake photographs and documents to, break down what's been going on with them. So that's basically how I go about things. If I get bank accounts and things like that from victims, which is quite frequent, trying to contact the banks is an absolute nightmare. A lot of them just really don't care that I've got other potential victims that are being used to launder money. It's really frustrating and part of why we want these collaborations going on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jules, would you mind raising your question?
Yeah, of course. Mine was more of a kind of a content question rather than tools question. I was just really struck by when you showed us examples of the same person, like real life person, being repeatedly used in scams. And I was wondering if you had any insights as to why scammers do that, because to me, if I was a scammer, wouldn't that make my scam easier to uncover if I use a real life person who's kind of well known for being used in scams?
It really depends on the scam that they're trying to pull off with the celebrities. They pull off, you'd think celebrities, why on earth would anyone fall for a celebrity scam? But they're really quite clever. They clone the celebrity accounts a lot of the time, and they will then respond to comments on the real accounts, and it looks like it's the real account responding, and then they will take them off and say, I've noticed you're such a loyal fan, do you want to come and chat on a private platform? And there's so many of these subscriptions and OnlyFans and everything else that's out there now. It starts to become believable. A lot of the time the men are used for the type of occupation that they're in. So you've got the military, the doctors, the ship's captains. They're used purely for their occupation, but they do try and find new ones now. Thank God for face check ID that's using AI to recognise faces rather than just pictures. They become easier to find.
Yep, that makes sense. Thank you.
I have one question. If we look at your slide, I yesterday had a discussion with Erin West, which you probably also know. And she asked me, how can we fight romance scammers better? And as you know, I run Scam Advisor, which helps consumers check websites. That's quite easy. Relatively, in the sense, okay, the scammers are lazy, they copy the website, and we're good at recognizing scammy websites. Romance scams are way, way, way more difficult because they're using now deep fake. They create images. If you had to choose, what measure would help us protect victims the most? What is the one thing you say we should push that the most, the hardest?
Stopping the stigma so that we can talk about it more. For me, that's going to be our biggest win.
I think both that and I feel regulation in terms from Meta, and that we as a society, that banks. I feel like I'm here for MasterCard. I've been speaking to MasterCard. Can you please come together, all these big companies, to have a proper community together and call out Meta and the dating apps for not doing enough? I think we're a bit too scared saying what it was. I think that's because they're the ones who, to be very fair, they don't do their fair share. I was way too nice towards Tinder in the documentary. I have changed my opinion a lot. So I think that, and of course, as Anna was saying, stigma, but I think that is the main thing that is not being done today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The huge platforms are enabling it left, right, and centre, aren't they?
Yes. So I think
Thank
that
you
would
very
be
much.
the huge. That's where the number. Yeah. Yes.
We're unfortunately running out of time. I really would like to thank you both for this presentation. I know it's, it's emotionally hard, but I think it's also great that you are really putting all that energy into really attacking this terrible way of scamming people. So I would like to ask the audience to give a big applause for all your work and sharing all your insights. And I am going to definitely look at your presentation and see where I can help you fight these kind of scammers more. So thank you, Anna. Thank you, Cecile. And I'd love to see you again in person very soon. But thank you very much for taking the time, and a big applause.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you very much for attending, and I hope to see you all the next meetup. And thank you for being here.